Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call this meeting to order. Item 2 on the agenda is the review of the minutes for October the 10th, 2017. Any comments on that? There's been a motion to accept the minutes as presented, and it's been seconded. On discussion, there's something that I want to mention. On page 4, there was a motion for a funding request for C, D, E, and E, and I don't remember that in the committee of the whole report for the end of the month. So where are we at with that grant? Because that ended up being, do you know anything about it? It ended up being an activity grant, but it's not listed there. I don't believe.
Page 4, St. Joseph's.
At the very bottom. Items added.
Move that the committee recommend to council that funding be given to in the amount of 2,500. Yeah, that went forward to council and it was approved.
Was it on the committee of the whole report? That I don't remember it.
Yeah,
Check it.
Yeah, it was, yeah. Done and gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's that going? Is that going as a activity grant? Because that's,
Five councillors are putting that.
No, it's going just like it says there, in the amount towards, a grant. It doesn't say activity or anything like that.
Councillor Bushy, hadn't you said, you were the one that made the suggestion of activity grants?
It comes out of the activity.
Okay, maybe you put your mic so the public can hear.
Yes, I made a motion that we take it out of the councillors' activity funds. Each
Okay.
councillor would donate $500 out of their activity fund.
But that's not listed here, so we don't really know how it goes. And you're saying it was on the committee of the whole report?
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, yeah, but it doesn't say it there neither, that it's activity.
It says what it says in here.
Yeah. So what is it? I just want clarification on what it is. If it's activity, then it's activity. But it's not there.
Well, that's what's been approved by council, what you're looking at. I mean, if it's not correct, you can make a motion to recommend to council that it be repealed, and then you can put in whatever you want.
So who remembers it being activity? Deputy Warden?
I think it was the understanding, as far as I know, that the motion from Councillor Boucher was that each councillor contribute on the activity fund $500 each.
Yeah.
How it was written in the committee of the whole report, I don't recall, but
I think we need to clarify it. And
what was the motion that was made to refer to regular council? I think the motion was that it become from the activity fund. That was the original motion.
yeah, but it's not written there or at committee of the whole.
Well-
On either report, it's not written that way.
Yeah, when it came to committee, to the council, it wasn't, nobody questioned it, it went through exactly like that.
Yeah.
However, if that's an error, and you can correct the minutes, and then we get to
Yep.
council, you can repeal that motion that was made, and if you wish to move forward with another motion, then
Has it been paid out?
I don't know.
No.
I don't think so.
Okay. So we will,
Do you want to pay it out of your activity funds, or do you want to pay it out of the $103,000 that we have there for tourism grants? I mean, no, it doesn't matter to me as long as you're comfortable with what you've approved.
Well, my understanding was, and my motion was to take it out of the activity fund, and I still stand by that motion.
and I did mention that night that I have no activity money.
That's right, you did, and then Yvonne got back to me and to all of us, I guess, and told us that, so we decided to add another $100 and some out of our activity fund to cover
Okay.
the total cost,
This is where I have an issue.
leaving you out. So you don't have any issue with that, you're not putting any money in it.
I have some big issues with it. I was of the understanding when we approved the budget, we had no activity funds. We had no activity funds. So did we argue about grants for 4 nights? Yeah, the activity fund the infrastructure fund money, we were not having that this year. What was remaining, you could keep, but we are not getting any new allotments.
You missed a conversation, if that's what you think you said, you heard.
Yeah, no, I was there. Didn't happen, I don't think. Let's proceed.
Well, excuse me, but I certainly been going through the chief financial officer with activities, and we're going back and forth, and he's asked me if I would okay that activity fund. I said yes, and he's paid them out, so I don't know
Well,
what you understood.
I was of the
But it's
understanding.
fine with me, and we're getting
So-
along fine, so.
Okay, so then we decided to have grants, just like we had them every other year.
Yep.
Infrastructure and activity, okay. In the policy for activity grants, you're not allowed to do multi-district, if I understand that correctly. We're doing them, it's gotta be for something directly for your district. So if we're gonna follow that policy, we should. I'm being nailed for travel policy issues. I think we need to follow that. So multi-district, which we've been doing all along, I understand that we can't do it, so maybe we need to reread that. And we need to rethink that grant.
But wouldn't
And I
this-
believe there's been 2 other grants.
Wouldn't this provide a tourism benefit to the whole county?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But then if
Yep.
it's benefiting his district, why can't he?
It's not,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, what's the problem?
it's benefiting all the districts. That's why, the motion was made to take so much out of everybody's activity fund.
I think we need to reread that, and it doesn't speak that way. Just reread it and just see what you guys think, because I didn't think we were able to do it. I know it's been being done, but I
Would
thought,
you
don't
suggest we
know.
do it out of the tourism fund?
well, I think we need to revisit those grants, and I believe that's coming up after, exactly how this money, because I've been telling people in my district, I do not have any money to give. I was very surprised when I got a list and there's money there. I was shocked, because I was of the understanding we were changing this whole grant structure, and it seems we didn't change it, if people have activity and infrastructure money.
But
So
that-
I am shocked by it, to get a
I
list.
think
that we
Warden
have-
Marchung and my understanding was that we would be looking closely at how we issue these grants and what's required before we do issue a grant, that we were requiring financial reports and through the chief financial officer. And that's being done in my case. As a matter of fact, I got one right here in front of me where it was required by the chief financial officer to send in their financial reports for a grant that they applied for. And so I don't know.
Okay, we'll have a
how-
discussion
how-
about it after.
Yeah, I think if you misunderstood something, then we'd have to clear it up, that's for sure.
Okay, so what are we going to do with that grant in the minutes? Are we going to approve the minutes with it as it is, or are we going to,
I'd say approve it the way it is, that's the way it was presented.
but it's not coming out of activity funds on both of them?
I guess the way it reads is that it's going to come out of the tourism thing, so maybe we should
Nope.
amend the minutes to show that it's going to come out of the activity fund. Is that what you're suggesting,
Yeah.
Mr. Warden?
Make an amendment that, because it doesn't say it's coming out of the tourism, towards the development of a heritage and cultural tourism circuit of the Acadian regions of Nova Scotia. Just says, recommend to council that funding be given to.
Okay. Well, perhaps it's enough to just say that that's what everybody, if you're unanimous in that's what you understood,
Okay.
then that makes it easy.
So we'll make a
Yes.
correction with
Yeah.
that being coming from activity funds for 4 of the districts.
Yeah.
Everybody's okay with
But you
that?
have money now in your district.
Oh, I didn't realize I had any.
So it's
So
gonna
are
come,
you in?
so it's gonna come to 5. Don't
I said
forget.
4, boys. You guys agreed.
So,
So,
I'm
Juan's got the emails.
sorry.
No, I guess, if I have money, but I was surprised to find out I had money. That's for sure.
And on that, I guess what I understood, and that's why someone's here tonight to make a presentation, is that you're going to look at grants closely
Definitely.
for next year.
Okay.
Your policies and everything.
Okay, so the amendment
So it's
will
going
be
to come out
that
of the activity
it's
fund,
coming out of
okay? I
activity
understand
funds.
that. I was the one who told Jason that it was coming out of the tourism fund. My apologies. We'll get that straightened out tomorrow morning.
And it'll be paid out, and that's it. It's over and done with.
It'll be paid out of your activity funds? Okay.
So is that 5? Not, like.
Yeah, we got, yeah.
I'm not going against policy. If I'm not allowed to give a multi-district grant, I'm not giving it out.
Okay, so if,
Okay. So,
If there's a question of this violating policy, again, this seems pretty simple to me. If there's a question of us violating policy, why doesn't it come out of tourism that the CAO is talking about?
Why?
If there's money in both pots, and this certainly benefits all of the county, why are we fighting about if we're
Yeah,
not,
where it comes
if we're not, we're violating policy, when the money can come from somewhere else?
Oh, you
The
guys,
issue right now is not where it's coming from, the issue is policy.
Yeah.
So there's two things, we have to figure out where the money's gonna come from, and who it's going to the city, and then if there's money there in tourism, stick with that, that's where it goes. If we got a problem with the policy and the way grants are going, which is not something that we're gonna discuss, then we'll discuss that when we get to it, but fighting about a couple of different things when we're again, we're spinning our wheels here.
Yeah,
And nothing's getting done.
contributions made from a municipal district activity fund shall be for the purpose that provides a direct benefit to the councilor's district. That's all that I saw, so. If you want it to come out of the tourism, then we'll do that. So we'll be very clear in that.
Your mic's not on. Still not on.
Well, it's on now.
Mine's on.
I don't really think that I have anything else to add to that, but I don't know why we're disputing if there's money in this tourism, this falls under the category of tourism, why doesn't the money come from the tourism pot of funds? That's my point.
Because, well, we have no policy on how we're giving money out of that.
So if you're worried about money coming out of your activity fund and you're sort of
Yep.
against that, it's either all five, and we all do $500 each, which was what, I think, where it
The
originally
initial.
came from. If anybody has an issue with that, then we take the $2,500 from tourism.
If you guys are okay with that.
We voted on.
Clear as mud, I know what you guys meant, I'll do it tomorrow morning.
As long as we keep track of where the money's coming from. Okay. So, we have a motion, we have a seconder. Any more discussion? Questions called, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carried. Moving on to items added. We had a slew of items added by 2 o'clock today, I guess, and is there any items to be added by unanimous consent? Anybody have any? Deputy Warden?
Yes, I have one for Infrastructure Fund, District Number 1.
Okay. Everybody's okay with that? And I have two. I have one, we spoke of it before, the org review, and it just has to do with the documents for the org review. I just want to be clear on any of the documents we received in the org review. So I'd like a motion coming out of that discussion. Be very quick. Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
And I have another one. Don't know if you want to discuss it in camera or discuss it out. It has to do with arena rentals. We have an issue with some rentals. Everybody okay with the discussion there, or do you want to go on camera? You know what
No,
that's
I don't
about?
think so. No? Yeah, sure.
Out in the open, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's okay with both? So I'll need a motion to approve the agenda with the items added by email today and the 3 this evening. Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Boucher,
Second.
seconded by Deputy Warden Gayesh. On discussion? Questions called, all those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carried. On to item 4, we have solicitor in reference to the Eastern District Planning Commission for proposed demolitions. I believe, Sean, you're coming up.
So property number 1 on the agenda is the property of Julia McDonald, 3601 Loch Lomond Road. Property owner was notified by registered mail on November 2nd, 2017. That letter was returned unclaimed. All notification to the property owner was returned unclaimed as well. The front of the property, you can see that it's in a dilapidated condition. It appears to be abandoned. It's open and accessible. The exterior of the building's not being maintained. The structural integrity of the building has come into question. You can see the serious signs of wood rot on the exterior walls, the eaves, and the floor system itself. It meets the Municipal Government Act, as it's in a ruinous, dilapidated condition. It's an allurement to children who may play there to their danger, and it's unsightly in relationship to neighboring properties. Our building official's report is that all doors, windows are beyond repair. Floor system appears to be leaning inward, strong indication that all walls would have to be replaced, making it a very unstable building. The roof of this building appears to be beyond repair and strongly recommends the dwelling to be removed from the property. Should a decision to upgrade this dwelling to the 2015 National Building Code be made, the project shall be overseen by a certified structural engineer by the province of Nova Scotia. So our recommendation is that it appears to be abandoned. It meets the Municipal Government Act as dangerous and unsightly, and therefore our recommendations in order to remedy condition, and that order be a demolition order issued from council to the owners. The order should state to the owners that the dwellings to be demolished and all debris be removed of and disposed of in the appropriate manner within 30 days. If the property owner fails to comply, the municipality will complete the same and recover the costs. Questions?
Any questions to Sean? Sean, I have a question. You're looking for a motion from us to move this.
Deputy Warden, when is it item?
Oh, it's not request. Did you want to say something? Because it's not here on here.
Yeah, my question is, like, a registered letter was sent to the owner
Twice.
twice and nobody responded.
No contact has been made.
Did you check with the tax department to see if these people are assessed for the property? Are they paying taxes or?
I didn't look into that. It's in that when it's in that condition, it's most times that it's just been abandoned. But when I was there, there's actually not even, I had to access through the neighboring property along the beach and up through the woods to get access to the building. It seemed like it was kind of a cottage that has no driveway. There's a civic address there, but it's kind of stuck in the middle of the woods, and unfortunately some neighbors that have built and renovated nearby have ended up with this beside their property.
Yeah, the reason for my question is if we can demolish it, and the only recovery aspect that we have is that we attach attach everything to the property owners, but
Right.
in this case here, we don't seem to be having any response from the owner.
The demolition order would also be posted at the building for the extended
Okay.
period of time, as well as sent registered mail as well.
Yeah, but the reason why I asked the tax department, I'd like to know if these people are paying property taxes.
Yeah, I'm not
That
sure.
means if they're paying property taxes, they just refuse to accept the registered letter.
Right.
If they're not paying, and there's about 3 or 4 years back taxes on it, that means that we can't locate these individuals that own the property.
Right.
So that's my only
Right.
question I want to find out, because
Any more questions? Sean, I just have one. In reference, I guess the fact that no correspondence has happened between you guys and the owner, is that going to inhibit us making any motions for demolition?
Everything, like I said, everything was sent registered mail and returned to myself.
Returned how,
Yes.
though?
Well, it's sent registered mail, so it's returned back through mail,
Okay, you got the address how?
through Property Online. Nova Scotia
So
Property
as
Online.
as Deputy Warden says, do we know if they're actually paying
I don't know
taxes to
that, no.
find out?
I can't answer that question.
Because maybe it's the
Yeah.
wrong address.
Well, it could be, but I mean, province, that's the responsibility of the owner to have the current address attached to the property identification number. So, but like I said, the demolition order, if it is issued, it's posted and sent registered mail, and if it's an issue with taxes and whatnot, I can look into that as well.
Yeah, if it's an issue on our part, then could we be sued if we tear down something? Is there some value on this that they could come back and say, you never warned me, you never gave me notice?
We have all documentation that it was sent registered mail and returned.
Yeah, but I
So-
mean, if it's the wrong address and it's our fault for the address, that's the only
But it
thing. Is
wouldn't be
there,
our fault.
that wouldn't happen? So you feel
You may
confident?
You may want to speak to your solicitor on that. I don't want to answer that question.
Yeah, no, but I mean, if you've had situations where that's happened, maybe you can just enlighten us on it.
I have not
None.
occurred.
So
in
you've
a
had
situation
situations where registered mail has been returned and we've still, counties have demolished and no issue?
like that. Yes.
We actually have properties that will be sold at tax sale where mail is returned. Now, we make efforts to, if it's property, we go a step further, but in the end, our solicitors advise us that, the responsibility to keep the mailing address up to date is with the property owner.
Mr. Merchant.
Councillor Boucher?
Thank you, Warden Merchant. Sean has told us that the property is danger to life or limb. It's in a dangerous, dilapidated state. In that state, he has informed this council now, that that's the state of the building, and it is a danger to life or limb. Once we know that, we have no choice but to act on it. We're responsible if the neighbor goes in there and gets hurt, or if a kid goes in there and gets hurt, something else. This county is responsible for it, because once we know that that building is in that state and we don't act on it, we're just as guilty as the owner. So my recommendation is to accept the recommendation of the Eastern District Planning Commission and remove the building from the property.
So we're going to have to act on that quick now. We can't wait 30 days.
No,
Because
that's right. It's a
You
danger
say,
to the public.
you give them 30 days, and if they don't,
We did not deem this an immediate danger.
so we don't have to
Well,
take it down immediately.
You might not have deemed it as an immediate danger, but when you sent a report that you just sent out here to this council, then to me the roof structure is not fit to live in. The floor is dilapidated to a state that's in a dangerous position. The building is wide open.
From our professional opinion, if we go to a site and we feel that it's an immediate danger of collapsing,
You do it
and
immediately.
there are children and there are a high traffic area, we complete the work that day.
Yeah.
We make every effort possible to contact the property owners to allow them to do it. And if we can't get them that day, then we complete the work that day. It goes to the first contractor that's able to get in there and complete the immediate danger. In this location, it's very remote. Yes, if someone were to go up in there, and find that spot, it's a dangerous spot. But in my professional opinion, it's not an immediate danger. It does meet the Municipal Government Act as dangerous and unsightly. My recommendation is for a demolition order, and the demolition order be a 30-day demolition order.
Okay. So, Deputy Warden, your light's back off there?
Yeah, the reason why I question that is not because just if we demolish it, that we have to put the demolition on the property owner, the cost of it. But I'm not concerned about that. I agree with Councillor Boucher. Anything that's unsightly and dangerous, we have to act upon it. And I think whatever your recommendation, if it is 30 days, I accept that. And I'm willing to make a motion that we...
And if we get nothing within that 30 days, on day 31,
The motion
and
is
that's still standing,
made already.
it goes to tender.
There was a
immediately.
motion made already?
Yeah.
No, I don't
Yeah,
think so.
Gilbert said, to recommend what Sean is stating. We just had some questions on it.
Okay,
So you're
wait
going to
30
wait the
days,
30
so-
days before you do anything anyway.
If you accept the recommendation
Yeah.
and council approves it, that's the 30-day demolition.
Well, do you want to make it, Councillor, 30 days?
Should have seconded before.
I want something to say
Yeah.
here. Okay, first of all, to add to what I did say about the dangerous and unsafe premises. If the recommendation from the Eastern District Planning Commission is for a 30-day notice, then I think that relieves this council of anything that happens within those 30 days. But let the record show that I did say to remove the building immediately. So if anything does happen, this council is not going to be responsible in the next 30 days for anything that does happen there.
Well, I
Thank
mean, he says it there, the order should state that the owners that the dwelling is to be demolished and all debris be removed and disposed of in an appropriate manner within 30 days. And if the property owner fails, the municipality will do it.
What I'm just trying to say, Warden Marchong, is that under the rules and regulations and the law, that if we know something is in a dangerous state, then it's our responsibility to act on it. Now, the Eastern District Planning Commission representative is telling us that no, it's not in a dangerous state of somebody's life or limb. So therefore, this county is not going to do anything about it
Okay, well,
Excuse me,
until he's finished with it.
I'd just like to say that's
No.
not what I presented, and there
Yeah.
is a provision in the Municipal Government Act for immediate dangers, and that's within the,
that would be
opinion.
done immediately.
that would be done
You wouldn't come
immediately.
here.
We've done that in
And
Richmond
you've done that
County
in
in
the
the last
past,
month with regards to an open well. That well was filled that day. That's an immediate
Yeah.
danger. Someone walks onto that property and falls in a well, and it's not notified. You know, in some of these cases, common sense does have to come into play.
Okay, there's been a motion. I thought there was a seconder, but I guess there wasn't. There's been a motion to accept the recommendation from the Eastern District Planning Commission. Is there a seconder?
Brian, I think, I'm confused as to what the motion is, because Councillor Boucher spoke of immediately.
Yeah.
And then there was a different one to say that we're going to accept what was presented.
It's a demolition order, proposed demolition, and as, if you have on your monitor, the second last bullet in there, that's what he wants. Sean, am I correct in stating that?
That's my recommendation.
Yeah.
If you make a motion to
Well, the motion
issue a
was to
demolition order
accept.
for 7 days,
Yeah, the motion was to accept the demolition. If we don't have a seconder, it's lost.
So it's to accept his recommendation.
His recommendation. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. On discussion, Deputy Warden?
Okay, I want to clarify what the motion actually is. Is it that we go according to the recommendation of the District Planning Commission
Correct.
within
That's what it
30
is.
days? Okay.
No, it's not so much within 30 days. It's a demolition order given to the property owner. We know he's not going to be able to get in touch, or we suspect he's not. So the property owner would have to demolish it within 30 days at their expense.
That's what I'm saying,
If they don't, we, the municipality, will take that on
right?
so on
and
day,
put that charge on their taxes, which you were concerned about us recouping the money.
so if a 30-day demolition order is issued, the
30
date,
days.
the date that is issued is the date that it starts.
That's
Once
right.
the 30
The
day
countdown starts.
Once the 30-day expires, if it's still there, I put it to a tender immediately. We get bids, we choose the lowest bid, and they have 14 days to complete
Yeah,
the
my
work.
recommendations according to, my motions according to the
Just-
recommendation of the
yeah.
District Planning Commission.
Just to clarify, when does the 30 days start? The day you mail that out or the day
No,
they accept it?
The day I receive the demolition order, and it's signed by you
Me.
two.
Yeah.
I post it and send it that day, and
You mail it that day?
I mail it, and
Yeah.
the demolition's always sent registered mail and posted on the property.
Okay.
For a minute,
Deputy-
tell me
Councillor Boucher?
how long you've been dealing with this?
Councillor Boucher, your mic? I've
My
got it
mic's
on,
on,
but,
yeah.
no, just tell them so they can hear. Okay.
This property?
Yes,
I don't have the exact date for it.
just roughly a month, 2 months, or?
Well, with the new procedure with dangerous and unsightly premises, we send the initial letter to make contact to try and get owner compliance with the owner. So we go through that process. We don't send the recommend. In years past, we've sent, as soon as we've got the complaint and we've gone to the property and we've deemed it to be a recommendation for demolition, that's the first notification the property owner gets. So they receive a letter that's recommending demolition on their property right off the bat. That's the first correspondence they receive. They don't get a letter stating we've received a complaint on your property and we'd like to speak to you on that and try and get owner compliance to save the municipality from spending money to demolish these places. We try and focus on getting owner compliance that way. So that's the procedure that we follow now. So it's gone through that process, and here we are.
So, okay, my next question is, when did they change the bylaw, the Unsightly Premises Act?
It's not a bylaw,
When did they change the regulation?
not a regulation either.
What is it then?
The procedure that we have?
Yeah.
So it's basically, it was requested that all of our letters go to PAC. That fell through, I believe, because it wasn't able to do that.
No, you did bring this one up, though,
Right, but no,
in your
back,
list of, in October.
it was,
No,
that
no,
was, but
that's- no, no,
the,
not local.
the initial was that all of these recommendations had to go through PAC first. That wasn't possible. I believe the municipality solicitor looked into it and didn't meet the guidelines.
No, that's not what I'm looking, what I'm
So,
asking.
no,
Sean.
so that's when PAC's judgment was that we wanted to give property owners more notification instead of just dropping a recommendation in their mail. So we've changed that. So within the last year, that's procedure has changed to, and we've had good compliance. The next two properties that we're going to discuss, we followed that procedure and we've got compliance.
I think what I'm getting at is procedures were changed without this council being notified about it.
The procedures were direct correlation from PAC and council.
I think what we wanted them to come to PAC so people could come there, and the recommendation would be made to council, but that's changed over the years for sure. Nonetheless,
Yeah.
we have a motion, we have a seconder. Any more discussion? So we're clear on the motion. The order will be given to these property owners, and within 30 days of us signing it, that will come down at our expense. Everybody's clear?
Not within, after 30 days.
After 30 days. If it's not done within the 30 days, there will be.
You do usually ask if there's anyone here for that property to speak.
The opportunity for the above property owner to address the committee. I don't think they're here if you can't get a hold of them. They're unaware, but I guess I'm assuming something I shouldn't be assuming, so I'm sorry. Is there any property owners here for that property? Question's been called. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Contrary minded? Nay, recorded.
Yes.
Motion carried. On to item B.
So
Sean?
do you record in the minutes that the warden asked if there was anyone here and no one came forward? Okay, good. Just asking, it's been a while.
Property number 2, I don't have a presentation because we've received compliance from the property owner. It was a demolition of a outbuilding and a cleanup of derelict vehicles, derelict items of machinery and equipment. We followed the procedure of sending a letter to the property owner, informing them of a complaint on their property. They contacted us back immediately and have been extremely cooperative with it. So last week I was on site and confirmed that they've complied with our recommendations, and a letter was sent to Mr. Degou regarding that, recommending we close the file.
Okay. Everybody's okay with that?
Did I get it?
Okay. Yeah, it was in the package, wasn't it? Okay, on to item C, Sean.
So the next property is the property of Elias and Kathy Dore on Lower Road. The owners were notified with the proposed demolition order again on November 2nd. You can see that the shed appears to be abandoned. It's open and accessible. The exterior of the dwelling is not being maintained. Signs of wood rot on the exterior walls, eaves, and roof system. It meets the Municipal Government Act for the reasons that I've stated earlier. Our building official's report is that it should be removed from the property, and should a decision for this building to be upgraded, it should be overseen by a structural engineer. So our recommendation is the same, that an order to remedy the condition be issued and a demolition order be issued from council to the owners. That order be a 30-day demolition order. And the property owner fails to comply, the municipality will complete the same and recover the costs. Now, on this one, I spoke with the property owner this morning on it. The roof has been removed. His initial intentions were to repair it, have an engineer look at it and to repair it. When he dug deeper and spoke with our building official and our development officer, a new building could be put back on that lot if that one has been removed. So his intentions now are to remove it. He has a current application in with our building official for a new building once this one's removed. So my recommendation is that an order still be issued. Just to be on the safe side, if the work isn't completed, we have the order issued. We don't have to go through this process again. However, I do feel that the cooperation will be there with this property owner as well.
Any questions or comments? Sean, the notice that we have, I mean, it's only a small thing, but there's a misspelling on Wharf. I don't know, is this the actual one that you signed that goes to them?
Yes, it should be, yep.
So I don't know if that's going to matter.
The wharf was removed before that recommendation. There was included in the initial complaint, and after the initial letter that was sent to the property owners, that was done immediately.
The wharf was taken
The
out.
wharf was,
So we
yeah.
don't have to worry about that.
The wharf was complete. That's why I don't have it in the presentation, because it's been taken.
Well, if it matters, but you never know. Okay, so you still want a motion to send the demolition
My
order?
recommendation is that we still issue a demolition order. The
Okay.
property owner is aware of that, and, but like I said, I've had good cooperation with this property owner, and I feel that it'll be done very, very soon.
Okay, so we need a motion. Councillor Martel.
Well, I know these people personally, and I don't think there's a reason that we should issue an order, so I wouldn't be supporting a motion to give them an order, because I think that if they say they're gonna clean it up, they will. And I think, like you said, Sean, they've been very cooperative so far.
They've
and
been great
give
to stay in
people
contact.
that will adhere to that, so I don't think there's a need for a motion for a demolition order. That's my opinion.
Councillor
So
Boucher?
I wouldn't be supporting a motion for to give the
Thank
order.
you, Warden Marchand. I agree with Councillor Martel. I know the people personally myself, and it's a man of his word. If he says he's taking it down, he's going to take it down, and that's
And like I
fine
said,
with
that
me.
process has started.
That's fine with me. I won't
So
be
everybody's
supporting the
okay?
motion.
No one wants to make a motion? Okay, we'll leave it as it is then. You're okay with that, Sean?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And once the property owner will contact me as soon as it is completed, and I'll send a letter to Mr. Degout, just stating the same as the previous property.
And we can always revisit it if they don't.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much.
Oh,
For Sean.
Councillor Boucher?
Sean, there was a property next door to Tim Hortons in St. Peters, an old abandoned house.
Yes,
Have you done anything with that property?
I have, that file is in progress. I don't have an update here because it's not on the agenda, but it is in progress.
Have you had any cooperation from the owners?
I have been in contact with the property owners, yes.
Yeah, because my understanding is they cleaned the house out. Everything that was inside is gone, and they've
Okay.
spoke to somebody to remove it from the property, but I just want to make sure. from
Again,
your-
that's why we send that initial letter too.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I mean,
I'll keep
it is a out of sight, out of mind
Yeah.
issue.
You can update us at PAC if we have one. Our next one, yeah. Okay. Deputy Warden, you had your mic on?
Thank you.
Yeah, Sean, just one question, please. If I have a complaint, or can I complain directly to the District Planning Commission as a counselor for
Your
dangerous and
policies-
unsightly, or is it
Your policy states no.
states no? So it's got to come from a resident in my area?
Yes. Your current policy states that any resident looking to make a complaint to a counselor or municipal official shall be directed to the administrator, which is myself or John Bain, and we will inform them of the procedure. And
What's the reason for that a counselor can complain on
so
behalf?
what it is I presented to council in the past. I was requested from council to present just on what other municipalities were doing and the policies, and 9 out of 10 of the other municipalities are all complaint form based, and it's the same policy. And what it is basically to avoid being the judge, jury, and executioner all in one, where if you make a formal complaint yourself and you're a counselor and you're sitting on the committee and you're making a motion to demolish someone's house, you become, like I said, the judge, jury, and executioner all in one. Now, if we've stated in the past, if you want to change that policy and allow it, we'll follow that
Okay.
policy.
Thank you.
Sean, what policy prevents us from doing that?
It's on your dangerous and unsightly premise.
Bylaw?
Yes.
Because that issue's come up numerous times.
Numerous times, yes, it has.
Everybody's
Sounds
okay?
good. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
We'll move on to item 5. CFO.
Guy with all the money. He must be a popular guy in here. Yeah, when we're looking for a grant. Yeah. So I guess kind of to the discussions you already had this evening, as part of the organizational review and some other discussions I guess you had this year, you want to take a good look at your grant system, how much you're putting in it, and how you disperse it and so on. And this is the very first, very broad crack at that. And there may be some things you'll like. I'm sure there'll be some things that you're perhaps want to question. And ta-da! How's that for an introduction?
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to speak. I guess at the Committee of the Whole meeting in October, when we were discussing some of the other general grants, the staff had offered to come back to Council with a framework of sorts on grants for discussion purposes in a draft format, and we committed to coming back as soon as possible. So I'd just like to say that we have put quite a bit of time in so far into developing at least a presentation on a framework. We've had discussions internally in the Finance Department, a couple of different meetings, and then some meetings with the managers and, of course, the CAO. So tonight, that's basically what we're going to present, is a framework for a new grant structure starting April 1st, 2018. So to start off, just to talk mainly about the process we'd propose in all this, it would be the applicant would fill out a master application. So that means we would have one application for any type of grant that anybody would be interested in applying for. All those applications would come directly to the Finance Department. We'd review the application and ensure completeness. And I guess in saying that, I'll discuss later a little bit of the requirements for the application. Finance would then make a recommendation to the CAO and Council. Council would approve or deny the grant after deliberating and discussing it. And then once a decision came back from Council, the finance staff would send a letter to the applicant. Of course, if the grant was denied, no further action would be required. And if the grant would be approved, then the project could commence. In this new proposal, the applicant would have till the end of the fiscal to finish the project and claim the grant funds from the municipality. They would require a request in writing. We would require a request in writing from the applicant to claim the funds, and there would be a certain amount of requirements that would have to be met as per policy in order for us to release the funds. And then, of course, the last step is the funds would be released. So some of the critical application requirements that we come up with is that, and it's not limited to this, we could add to this list, but the critical requirements would be that the group would have to provide an overview or a description of the project. They would have to provide a current active registry of joint stocks. They would have to provide a project budget along with confirmation letters of funding sources. So if the organization was claiming that they had been approved by a COA, for example, or the province for money, they would have to provide us with copies of letters showing that or proving that. They would also have to provide us with 3 quotations with an explanation of why they awarded the work to the specific quote. The reason for this is because we've had one applicant, a couple of applicants apply and only submit one quote, and the staff found that the quote was high. I believe it was a grant in the warden's district. So we had some discussions with the warden, and the warden went back to the group asking them to get a few more quotes. We don't really have experience in the quotations, but at least if they could provide 3 quotes and some explanation as to why they awarded it to a particular contractor. They would also have to provide a most recent set of financial statements, which would be generally a balance sheet and income statement. The projects start after approval date. This is a big one that we thought, what we've seen in the past is some organizations have applied for funding for an activity or an infrastructure of something that has already taken place. It could have been months gone by that they're looking for money. So generally with other levels of government, provincial and federal, they would not be able to start the project until they'd had received approval from all levels of government. Next, the request would have to be made by the director or a director of the organization. What we've also been seeing is that someone that's not directly affiliated with the group or is not a director on the Registry of Joint Stocks is applying for the funding on behalf of the group. I think we've seen other organizations like subcommittees of groups basically applying for funding and using that organization as a segue to applying for funding because they're active and they're on the Registry of Joint Stocks. And the last thing would be that we feel that there should be one representative appointed from each group. And the reason for this is because I think some councillors had brought up the point that, councillors are being bombarded by different people within the group for different projects or what have you. So if the organization could represent or appoint someone, perhaps at their meetings, to communicate either with the councillors or with the staff, then it would basically streamline the communication. So next, the release of funds requirements. Some of the things that we feel should be required would be a formal letter requesting release of funds from the group, a confirmation of the project being complete 100%, copies of all invoices, receipts, copies of cleared and canceled checks that would match to those receipts. I think in the past, we weren't always requiring the cleared and the canceled checks. Sometimes people were providing invoices only. So we'd like to take that a step further and get them to provide cleared and canceled checks. And lastly, a financial statement for the project. I think an income statement would suffice. I guess just to note, when they apply, they would provide the financials for the whole group. And then subsequent or after the event or the infrastructure project, they would provide a financial statement just for that particular project so that we could see after the fact, well, was the event profitable or what did they make money off the event or the project. Some additional notes that we put forward is that all funding would not carry forward, and I know this is a big recommendation because, would be a big change because right now with the infrastructure and activity, or the infrastructure at least, we carry forward those grants from year to year. What we'd like to see is work with the groups and have the groups get more organized to apply and plan their projects so that maybe they would apply in April, May, June at the beginning of the year in anticipation for the construction season, and then they would have their construction over the summer months or into the fall, and then that would give them time to apply for the release of the funds prior to the March 31st year end. No district allocations. I know this was talked about a lot during budget deliberations. We thought it would be appropriate to get away from having district allocations, so the money that council put forward would be collectively put forward out of general revenue, and there would be no district allocations whatsoever. Applicants can only receive one avenue of funding per project activity. I think there was some concerns in the past that some grants were being double funded through different avenues in the municipality, even though it's all from the same pot of money. So we're proposing that any one activity or one project could only have one avenue of funding. We also set, which we'll talk about in a little bit, the maximums per group per year. So this would cap on amounts that groups or organizations could receive. We'd like to include in a policy that we reserve the right to an inspection. There may be an instance where perhaps the council would wish that staff go out and inspect. I'm just thinking out loud on an infrastructure project. Maybe there was an issue with a contractor, between a contractor and an organization. I don't think it would be necessary to do it every time, but we thought that maybe if there was a scenario where council wished, we could go out and inspect. And then also we reserve the right to deny an application based on a financial needs assessment. I think this is a big one talked about by all of us, is that when the group applies for funding and they provide their financial statements, and when the memo comes to council as a recommendation, that there should be a financial needs assessment contained in that recommendation. From a reporting communication standpoint, finance is committed to tracking the grants in a quarterly report to council. So this would be, again, one master application, one pool of money divided in a couple of different types, but we would report to council quarterly what grants were paid out. So I'm just envisioning a spreadsheet that would contain, the date, the organization, the amount of the request, the amount that was actually paid out, because sometimes the amount paid out is less than the initial request. And then if council wishes, we could also have in there a tracking of what district the organization or the grant was paid out to. So we'd be able to gauge on our own from a staff perspective which districts had received how much money, even though it's not divided in our GL by funds. Council would be advised if multiple applications per one project activity existed. So again, just as I mentioned in the past, some organizations were tapping into different areas of funding. We thought it would be useful for this new grant structure, once adopted by council, to be advertised. So we could advertise it in the Reporter, on our website. And staff have also, it was a good idea, one of the staff members brought up that it would be a really good idea to offer information sessions. So once we go through this process and council adopts a policy, we could offer info sessions where a representative from each group could come here to the municipality, and we would present to them and give them copies of the new policy and of the application, and then we could go through the process, start to finish, what is eligible, what is not eligible, and how everything works and how it comes to council. And that way all the groups would be properly informed of what our policy is and how it's going to work on a go-forward basis, starting April 1. So we'll get in now to the actual grant structure. So type 1 of a grant would be, we're proposing that we would still maintain an infrastructure pool, would be 50% dollars, but the budget would now be $150,000 per fiscal. However, we would implement maximum of $5,000 per application, one application per year per registered organization, which if you divide the two numbers would mean that at least 30 grants would be paid out per year, could be paid out per year to 30 different organizations. Type 2, we looked at basically revamping the existing activity fund that councillors currently have. However, we'd be calling it a startup activity fund. And that activity fund would also be 50% dollars. It's currently funded at 100% dollars. The budget would be $25,000 for fiscal, and it would be a maximum of $500 per application. 2 applications per year per registered organization, and it would be at least 50 grants per year paid out of that pool. So what we're proposing here is a 1-year, one-time funding. So I think we've heard around the council table, some of the former staff here had the idea that we would support new activities across the county. So this would be a fund where a group would come forward and would have an idea to start a new activity to raise money for their group to be profitable. So of course, in year 1, there would be new expenses, probably one-time expenses. So this fund would provide $500 to that group to basically get the activity off the ground. Then we would only commit to that 1 year. If that activity continues on, we would not fund it anymore through this fund. So it would be a way to help them get off the ground, but then we wouldn't have these reoccurring organizations coming every year for the same activity for 10 years straight, for example. So type 3 funding would be recreation/sponsorship type grants. And the first area would be a physical activity grant, 50% with only a budget of $10,000 per year, and this would be a maximum of $1,000 per application. 1 application per year per registered organization, which means at least 10 grants would be provided to different groups. Second area would be leadership development, would also be 50% of expenses with a budget of $5,000 and a maximum of $500 per application and per person per year, which means there would be at least 10 per year. So a leadership development grant would be a type of grant where an instructor would need a higher level of certification in order to conduct programming for us throughout the year for the recreation department. So we would send that person on a course to get certification or get a diploma or whatever it is and pay 50% of the expenses up to a maximum of $500. So type 3, continuing on with type 3 recreation sponsorship. The third avenue would be a sponsorship type grant. We would put a budget of $15,000 on that, and it would be a maximum of $250 per application. So that would be at least 60 grants would be paid out. And sponsorships, things that come to mind, sponsorships would be if an individual was representing Richmond County in a provincial or a regional tournament, if a team was representing Richmond County in a regional or a provincial tournament, if we wanted to sponsor a golf tournament locally, different types of sponsorships would fit into this. And the last fund, excuse me, the last fund in recreation sponsorships would be the Canada Day funding. And what we're proposing here is that no change would take place to the Canada Day funding. It's currently budgeted under the recreation section, and it's a budget of $15,000, which is a maximum of $3,000 per district. The only change in this would be that right now, there's no real application process for this. The councillors are deciding individually who they'd like to give the money to when it comes. So what we're proposing along with recreation is that basically groups would have to fill out the master application for this type of funding. They would probably fill it out in like April or May. It would go through the same process normally, that finance would review it and would make a recommendation to council. And then council would decide which groups are going to get how much. And then once the approval comes back to staff, then the organizations would be given an approval letter and they could go ahead and start to spend money in plan for Canada Day. Doing too much talking. So the type 4 funding, the last type of funding would be the regional health general section, would be a budget of $150,000 per fiscal, a maximum of $10,000 per application. And the types of things we were thinking here would be projects with a broader scope. Would be like a Cape Breton-wide project or a Nova Scotia-wide project. What comes to mind is the Destination Cape Breton. We recently had an invoice for $10,000 where all 4 municipalities were contributing. Those are the types of projects that would fit in here. We would also fit into here grants given to hospitals, the school bursaries, etc. So at least 15 grants could be paid out of this fund annually. So to summarize the 4 type of funds, infrastructure, activity, rec sponsorships, regional health in general, it would be a budget of about $370,000 in grants. So some of our further recommendations, which are pretty big recommendations, the staff proposed that council consider eliminating the core funding policy altogether and no longer provide core funding. We also proposing phasing out bylaw 56 at 50% over 2 years. So organizations are currently receiving a 100% tax exemption. What we're proposing is that starting April 1st, 2018, they would only receive a 75% tax exemption and the municipality would save 25% of that amount. And then in year 2, we would go down to a 50-50. So the organizations would have to pay 50% of their taxes, and then the municipality would cover the other 50%. Some ideas were tossed around to perhaps eliminate this bylaw altogether and phase it out over 4 years, kind of like what was done with the business occupancy tax years ago. Basically, what we're proposing and what we came to a consensus was that council would commit to 2 years, 50-50, and reassess in year 2. So just to go over the savings very quickly, currently in the 17-18 budget, we have about $957,500 budgeted in total grants. That includes the bylaw exemption. As part of our proposal, the 2018-2019 budget would see a reduction to $717,500, which would be a dollar savings of $240,000 annually, a percent savings of 25.07. In year 2, because of the phase out of the bylaw 56, 25%, we'd see a further reduction from $717,500 to $635,000. So that would be a dollar savings of $82,500, which is 11.5%. So overall, if you look at the reduction from $957,500 to $635,000, it would be an overall dollar savings over 2 years of $322,500, and it would be a percent saving of 33.68. So I think we all can agree that upwards to $1 million in grants is a huge amount of money to be paying out annually from a budget of $14 million. But at the same time, we don't want to, make the pain too large for the community groups. They obviously provide a lot of value and hard work to the community and to Richmond County. So we thought a 1/3 arrangement where we would reduce 33% of the overall grants going out of this municipality was fair. So our next steps, what we thought tonight is we proposed the framework. At some point in time, we can have some discussion and debate on the framework. Once we agree on the framework, staff would commit to drafting an actual policy and a master application for council to review and debate and then approve, hopefully. Staff would then advertise and communicate the new structure to the public, to the groups. And then the budget for 2018-2019 would incorporate this new framework, and the process would start April 1st, 2018.
Thank you, Jason. Any questions? Councillor Boucher?
Thank you, Warden Marshall. Well, thank you very much, Jason. I think we're headed in the right direction. And there's a lot of money out on the table going from the taxpayers for grants now, and I don't really think it's fair to the taxpayers to pick up all this money. So you're on the right road to this. April 1st is, why are we going to April 1st? Is that the fiscal year for your?
Yeah, April 1st would be the fiscal year, and then just looking from a timing perspective, we'd still have to come back to council with an actual draft policy and the application, and then council would need time to adopt the policy, and then we would also need time to notify the public and perhaps have those information sessions. So we were just thinking if we could come back in a future meeting before the new year, hopefully, and present that policy in the application, and then use the 2 meetings to adopt the policy, then we would be ready to set go to April 1st.
Okay, my next question, would we put a hold on all applications until April 1st after the new year? We don't
From
wanna
now
be
till
long.
then?
Yeah,
I mean, council could consider that. I mean, right now, there are still applications coming in for infrastructure and activity funds. So we've been proceeding with those in the normal fashion. We've been paying out the grants that have been approved at the last meeting by council, so council is aware of those applications. And then I have received a few requests from new organizations that are looking for funding in the next several months. So I guess how I'm proceeding with those is I'm basically just going back to the group and asking them for a lot of information, similar to the framework that we're presenting tonight. And I think we've had some discussions on some groups that are coming forward. And then I think what I will do is assemble a package and then send those applications to council for consideration and approval.
yeah, what I'm getting at is I don't want you to be bombarded with a bunch of applications, knowing that April 1st, this is gonna be the law from
Yeah.
now on.
Yeah.
And you're stuck with 200 applications and gone through them, and spent a lot of time, and you and your staff on them.
Yeah, I think that's happening now. I think just because we're in the midst of a transition and some of the councilors are sending the groups to the finance department for discussion in the application, which is basically what I think we're all agreeing on. So there has been an increased level in applications, in communication, but we kind of got to get through the hump and get a policy approved, and then we'll be good to go, hopefully.
Thank you very much, Jay.
Councillor McLean?
Maybe just to build on Councillor Boucher's point, and I think maybe we could use the next 5 months, 6 months to phase into what you're discussing, and certainly I want to comment you on that work, because there's a lot of good stuff there. I think that, as you mentioned, if you're taking in the new applications and you're considering that, bringing some of those things back to council, I think might give us all a little bit of a dry run before we get to that point where we're implementing something on April 1st. So I would just recommend that maybe we move towards something that is not quite policy yet, but we are working together to sort of iron out some of the kinks before we actually get there. So, thanks.
Councillor Martel?
Yeah, that certainly seems to have put a lot of work in it, and to be commended for the work that staff has done so far. But I guess the question that I have too, and I think that Councillor Boucher had brought it up at an earlier meeting, the ones that we have already committed that would be still stay in the hopper, that would be paid, and then the following grants would be kind of based on what you're presenting tonight, and to go through that process in some fashion. Question I have is on the different types of framework that you're talking about, are we saying that all those grants, once you've applied and had a grant, that's it, you can't get another one the following year for the same thing? Like if you applied for a certain project one year, especially for activity, because the activity is ongoing, right? You might have a festival this year, and a festival next year, and a festival the year after. So are we saying that if we give a startup grant for a festival, some of them have already been established, that would be a one-time thing, and the following year they wouldn't qualify?
Yeah, I think the idea is that the staff feel that if a group wants to start a new activity, then that's great. That's what we want. We want groups to come forward with new activities, and we want to help bridge the gap on some of those first-time expenses that are coming forward. But the idea of the event from the group, from our perspective, is that the event should at some point be sustainable and profitable on its own. And if it's not profitable, then the municipality should not be used as a resource to profit that event. So we'll help get you off the ground, you get the event going, you make it profitable, and then if the event can't sustain itself on its own, then the group would have to consider basically not doing that event and come up with a new idea. I guess that was the thought behind it.
So what, have you given any thought on the existing event? Because there's a lot of existing events that are happening every year, like the Acadian Festival in Ordway, stuff that's happening in St. Peter's. How do we deal with those people? Do we continue every year supporting them either through a sponsorship or a grant or whatever? I mean, those are things that people are expecting. They've been expecting all along. So are we stopping that? Or are we cutting that out? Or
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be some pain along the way. I mean, I think if you talk about paying out $1 million in grants to organizations and all of a sudden you say we're going to cut it 1/3, mostly 25% all in the first year, there's going to be some opposition to that. But I guess the idea is, unless it fits into the criteria that we're proposing, I'm just thinking out loud, like the recreation sponsorship category, we might be able to provide an event with $250. That would be the maximum under that type.
okay, thank you.
Any more comments? Jason, I fear with the various categories, and especially as Councilor Martel says, the activity grant, it's one that we give to an organization and expecting financials for it, and it's going to be a lot of work, but if it's only a one-time thing, how many new activities do we expect the groups to be putting on? And what's considered new? A change in the date, change in the number of people, like Councilor Martel says, there's annual events that go on and they expect their $500 or $1,000 a year and we give it to them. As for whether they're sustainable or not, it's extra money that they make because a lot of these events are put on to make money. So if we have that as criteria, that they're self-sustaining, actually what we're doing for a lot of them we're giving them extra money.
What you're doing is you're
you know.
boosting their profit, so
That's right.
so each year they probably would have made money without the municipality's contribution, but the municipality's contribution, it really ends up being pure profit. So
Yes.
from the staff perspective, we're not opposed to charging for an event, initially. I guess what our support is to help offset some of those one-time costs that come with creating a new event and putting themselves out there with a risk of losing money in the first year. So we'll provide you with a $500 grant up front for that event if you meet the criteria. And then, if it didn't work well in the year one, then the group should consider not having it in year two, or maybe doing something else that might be more profitable. Because that was the idea behind it.
Okay, so if they don't make money in year one, they can call it something different, have it the same time of the year, and try to make money again and get another $500 grant.
No, well, I'm thinking
I'm
more.
just worried it's gonna
more of a different type of event. I mean, you see different types of events. You see an organization, and just use Acadiaville maybe for an example. They've done a bike rally, they've done, suppers, they've done different types of event, and it seems that when the event doesn't work, they're trying something different. So I guess that just gives you an example. So I mean, again, we would put further criteria in place to make sure that it's a new event. I'm not thinking a different date or a different time. It's got to be a new type of event, a new creative idea. That was the logic behind it.
Some of the events, they continue them year after year. So
Yeah.
just changing a name, that's what I worry. People are going to change a name, and it's going to be the same. So especially with activity, that's what it is. It's an activity, it's annual. The infrastructure, I can see, that doesn't seem so bad. I worry about this activity grant and people looking for sponsorships other ways. When you say limited, like one application per year, is it one application? Because it's going to be one standard form with a different, maybe six checks of what they want, infrastructure, activity, sponsorship.
Yep.
So one application a year and that's it, done?
Well, I think that one we were proposing 2 applications per year. So
For
the group,
that one.
so for just the activity, the infrastructure would be 1. For the activity, there would be 2. So a group could have 2 different types of events per year and apply twice for that same pool of
But
money.
in your preamble to that, you say council will be advised of multiple applications per one project or activity.
Yeah, so I guess what was happening before is that you might have seen 2 pools of money paid for the same event. So we would be eliminating that, I guess, in the new.
Okay, so when you say applicants can only receive one avenue of funding per project
Right, so you can't
activity.
apply for a festival and say, well, we want to get recreation money,
From
but we
2.
also want to get activity startup money, and it's a new event. You would only be able to apply for one avenue of funding in the types.
So you have a maximum per group per year, and that's in the category?
Yeah.
Like, can one group apply for infrastructure, activity, sponsorship, leadership? They can apply for all of them.
Yeah, not all in the same application, but technically
Yeah.
at different times throughout the year, they could tap into these different
So,
pools
so
of
the
money.
limits are per.
The
per
limits are more per structure,
Per
which
structure.
I haven't calculated the total limit because it would float.
Okay.
But generally, it would keep the applications per down, I guess.
So would anybody be against the activity, just changing it to a maximum of 1,000, and one application per year? Or leave it at 5 if they had 2 events, but if they got 1,000 for one event, they made extra money, they can use the cash they made from that one for the next. And it would just limit the number of applications you're getting, the number, the paperwork, I guess, that you guys have to look at, and just give them 1,000 per year, because if we're gonna have it that it's gonna be new activities, we're not gonna
Well-
be doing 25 of them a year.
Well, and I think that's why these are budgeted numbers, so I guess we would budget this in the new year, and I mean, there may be some tweaking to the policy in the next budget
Yeah.
year, because you're right, you may do that, and you may have only 5 applicants, and you may have a large part of the money not being used, and if that's the case, then council could either look at reducing the overall amount or increasing the maximum. These were just starting points, I guess, to
Yeah.
go forward.
I see a bunch of mics on there, but I just want to mention one other thing. When you speak of in that fiscal year, I just have a worry that groups do come to us for money a month or 2 months or weeks before they're doing a project. So they would have to have them in April, because if they're starting in January and they're looking for federal and provincial money that's coming out in April, they would have to have it for the following budget year, because some of these applications are put in months before. So if we're expecting, if we give them an approval, it's hard for them to put it in January and date it for April the 1st, because some of them want to know if they're getting the funding so they can put that on, because if the province or the federal government wants to know what other levels of funding are you getting, just like we want to know, they're just going to be chasing their tail of, well, these guys are only going to give it to us if you say you're giving it to us, and you're only going to give it to us if you say, so.
Yeah, I think that was discussed, and if an organization came forward in January or February, but they felt they couldn't do the product and spend the money before March 31st, and then they could technically apply for funding in the next fiscal year and get that going in January. But it would not be part of the current year's fiscal money.
Yeah, that's going to lead to some problems, okay.
Who's next?
You are next, but you want to just talk in mind, maybe?
Try it again.
No, I'll have to cancel two. Cancel yours, Councillor Martel.
Somewhere out my mic? All right. So the idea of this was just to throw a whole bunch of stuff out there and try to get some preliminary feedback on what might be acceptable and what, if anything, you thought was totally unacceptable. And then there'll be another more precise presentation made in a month or two. Some of the things that he's run by you that are radical changes are the exemptions that we give to halls and those type of facilities now. Staff, we'll say he, are, a 50% cutback, okay, over 2 years. So your halls would go from paying no taxes to paying half their taxes. There's some rationale for that. For one thing, right now, we have a hall on the, or another community facility on our assessment roll. We pay, even though they're not paying any taxes to us, we have to pay fees for the assessment services, for education and so on based on that. But anyway, that is a big one that you would, just trying to get a feel for whether you're willing to consider that. Another is that this proposes eliminating the district funds that you have now, so there'd be no more district funds. A third major point is that the maximum infrastructure grant be $5,000, and they'd have to go out and get 3 quotes I understand that right? And they'd have to do the work within that year. So they apply for a grant in January or February, they could for next year, get approval in April. They gotta finish that infrastructure before the next year. So, and no carryover of funds. So all of those things are something that you folks would be willing to look at least in a policy? Hey, that's great.
Any more concerns? Jason, for an area in my district, where we use some of the infrastructure money for filling the gap with the sidewalks, how do we deal with that? Because that's going to be ongoing till 2023. So now you're adding $15,000, $20,000 expense to that community again. So that needs to be considered in this. You know, there's no owning group to that can apply for $10,000 a year.
Mhm.
So is it just something we grandfather in and say every year they get their 10,000 or?
Yeah, I think, maybe we can, council, if council wishes, we can go back to staff and maybe come back with some options for what we would, how we would handle that piece. But I think, in other municipalities, I think some of those costs are being covered through the general rate on sidewalks. So it's not, it's maintenance on a
It's a
sidewalk.
considerable-
It's
Considerable increase.
it's municipally owned infrastructure, and if council was willing to fund that through the general rate, then we could go down that road.
Oh, the general rate, I thought you meant.
Yeah. Not through infrastructure. Technically, it shouldn't be funded annually through infrastructure, so I guess we could look at it. Well, I think,
You're paying for them now.
Councillor Boucher, your mic?
Tell them who's paying for them now.
Well, actually, yeah, the general tax rate pays for a lot of things, be it, one area to another. There's been many discussions over, when it came to the fire protection, since St. Peter's pays a certain amount of taxes, they feel, what they pay in that extra penny was making up for that extra 80,000 we give them, but actually it's my district that brings in the most taxes probably because of the industrial park, so
That's right, yeah. Yes, that's your district.
it's no longer Shirley's, it's
yeah,
mine.
I think it's not uncommon
So-
for other municipalities to fund sidewalks as the county infrastructure through
Yeah.
the general rate. So, from a staff perspective, I wouldn't be opposed to looking at that. I think the levy raises pretty much the debt payments on the sidewalk, so if it's a matter of just the general tax
Yeah,
rate
it does
covering
that
the
and a bit
maintenance.
more, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the maintenance. Councillor Martel?
Yeah, I guess I agree with the CAO is that this is only preliminary and stuff, and there'll be a lot of kinds of discussion, but just on the point that, Brian, that you had raised about the deadlines for application, a lot of times, this stuff is going to come to council, and it's always conditional on the other funding being in, so they could apply earlier on in the year, be approved by us, conditional on getting the other funding, and if they don't, then we're out. So that, I don't think that would be a big issue. But again, as we set down some new rules and regulation, I'm sure there'll be people looking to get their application in other ways that we haven't thought about. So but we'll have to deal with that when it comes.
Thank you, Councillor Martel. Deputy Warden Gayash?
Yes, I think council is pretty well on the same page when it comes to grants. We all know that over $1 million a year for grants with a small municipal unit like Richmond County, and you were talking 14 million, and when you figure the bottom figure, it's less than 14 million. That operating cost of a municipal government is probably 7 or 8, and you give $1 million in grants. I commend you for the tremendous work that has been done on this, and I think it's food for thought for this council. And I think it's not going to be done overnight, but I guarantee that it's a step in the right direction, whereby we have to be accountable as taxpayers, or as councillors. We have to be accountable to the taxpayers, I should say. Certain issues, and I don't agree with the infrastructure that we mentioned for sidewalks. I don't think that's put in the policy. You cannot put an infrastructure that's already there and keep funding it. It's not a new infrastructure. That's not what the infrastructure funding was all about. And I don't agree that sidewalks should be funded on a general tax rate. If that's the case, that means that I'm going to apply for sidewalks in Little Lance, Alderney Point, Petit Grone. Gilbert's going to apply for sidewalks in River Bourgeois. Jason, you can apply for sidewalks in Lardwez and your districts in Fourchou and Frauboise and all those areas. And all the other councillors can apply for sidewalks because everybody's paying for it. And then we'll be back in worse shape than what we are by trying to reduce the grant system that we're in a position right now that we're feeling we're paying too much money. So I think we have to be very careful of, and when I say accountable, I mean, let's be accountable. But I like your proposal, and I commend you on the work that the staff has done for this. We've been looking for this type of feedback, and I think we're going in the right direction. There's still a lot of work to be done, a lot of things we have to look at. And what I like about it is it doesn't matter what kind of activity, what the activity is, how many activities you have to show financial statements. And for the different activities, if you can go to different banks and have different accounts for different activities, well, you know, be it, but I don't think that'll happen. You still got to show your financial statements, where you stand as an organization, and do you actually need this funding? And I don't think we're here to provide funding for something that is beneficial. If you got an activity and it makes money, it's profitable, that means your organization, your district is supporting it because they see a benefit for it, and it's going to continue, and it's going to be great for the community. If they see no benefit to it, they're not going to support it. So I think we're just wasting our money, putting money into activities that don't do any good at all in the first place. So thank you, Jason, for your work on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Boucher?
Thank you, Warden Marshall. Here's an example of what James is just talking about here. There was a grant applied for in my district, and I asked the CFO if he would ask this organization for the financial report for the fundraiser they put on. They did send it to him, and they took in $1,417 on a breakfast. Their expenses were $729.80. Their profits were $687.20. So now they're looking for $500 from the taxpayers of Richmond. So why are we supporting things like this? They made money. If they went in the hole, I'd be the first guy to say, look, you know, I got some activity money, I'll give you some of that, take you out the hole. These people are making money, and they're still coming back to this county for activity money that they don't need. They made their money with their breakfast. They didn't go in the hole with it. They're showing a profit. And I commend Jason for this because he stuck with this, and he waited until he got all these figures back from them, and this is the figures they gave him. So they didn't lose any money with this fundraiser. They made money, and yet we're still going to pay them $500. So, and I think I commend Jason on this, the proposal he's doing now, but I think we have to get at this right away and get it done, and you know, and save the taxpayers money. It's getting out of hand with grants. Every person around, every time you talk, well, I'm going to apply for a grant. You're going to apply for a grant, and like Jason said, that's fine. If it's a startup grant, you get paid once. You go in the hole, that's the end of it. You make money with it, don't come back. Thank you.
I just want to say a couple of things, and I'll start on the sidewalks first. The sidewalks for my community, they're paying a portion of a public works staff, and they pay for a tractor that gets used at our landfill and gets used in Petit de Gras, and that's paid for by my community. So maybe those things will have to be looked at as well. We need to realize that this grant, the change in this structure is going to affect a lot of volunteer groups. We have a hard time getting volunteers, so we just need to be careful how we implement this for sure, especially when it comes to charging 50% of the taxes, because some of these organizations are assessed quite high because over the years they never had to appeal any assessments. So those assessments have gone up this will be, it'll do one good thing. Maybe they'll start appealing their assessments and getting them back to where they should be. But we do need to realize it's going to be a double impact on some groups. I mean, you have some of these groups going to be paying commercial taxes probably now. I assume, Jason, they're pretty much all in the commercial realm.
Yep.
So that's, 2.5 times what we pay on the residential rate for buildings that are assessed at, $100,000 minimum. That's a $1,200 hit for these people, at least. So that's going to be an impact. And now cutting the amount of grant funding we're giving them is going to be an impact. Nonetheless, on the flip side, either we do more with the extra money we have, or we give a substantial tax break to the people within the next couple of years for this. But my last question, Jason, is one of your bulletins here, you have reserving the right to deny the application based on the needs assessment, the financial needs. And I guess it goes to Councillor Boucher's point. Is the need going to be the ability to make profit on an activity, or if the group has money sitting there in reserves or in whatever you want to call it, will we deny them immediately based on they have money?
Yeah, well, I think we haven't gone fully down the road of what the criteria would be, but I think that's part of the next step, is that I think when the application is applied for, part of the finance vetting the application, may have 4 or 5 critical things, that council would wish to have looked at. Do they have over a certain amount of money in their bank account? Do they have reserves? Maybe 4 or 5 checklists. And if they have, 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 of those criteria, then basically they would be deemed not to need that money based on a financial assessment. So that would come to council as part of the recommendation when we bring it, and then it would up to council to decide, well, do they really need the money, or do they not need the money, or maybe there's a reason out that I'm not aware of. So I would provide the recommendation, and council would review and make the decision whether to fund it or not.
Okay. Well, it's a start anyway, I guess. It's a good thing. So there'll be some more work, I suppose, on this, and I guess we continue with the grant structure as we have it right now. Thank
Yeah.
you, Jason.
Next step, I guess, it comes back with a policy, a draft policy that implements these things. You've given them good feedback, and you've got away good.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 6 is the correspondence, which is just a list of checks, I guess. So if anybody has any questions on the October checks, I believe they're on the website? Yeah. Anybody has any questions, just email us, Councillor Boucher.
Thank you, Warden Mercer. I have a question. What is the check for $120,000 to the W.B. Kingston Memorial?
That's the
transfer
grant
of
that
the
came
grant.
through the Department of Health. And before I got here, you found the Kingston Clinic to be the people who would deliver it. So the money came from health to us for the purpose of giving it to the Kingston Clinic. There's going to be another one. You also decide to give them $40,000 of our money on top of that. Now, that hasn't been given to them yet, but
No, hold off on that one, wouldn't it?
they've asked, but we're negotiating with your neighbor.
Thank you very much.
Okay, on to items added, which is, you want to start, Deputy Warden, or do you want me to start?
Doesn't bother me, you're the chairman.
Okay, the org review, when I brought that up the first time, I wanted, if there's any privilege or confidential nature on any documents that we got, I wanted that kind of removed. I'm not saying there is that, but I don't know if anybody's receiving calls, but I am on some of the documents that we have. So the initial motion was only on the report, and that report was only given to us after we had all those meetings. So the documents I meant were the documents that we were given throughout those meetings that I wanted that removed on. I believe most of that stuff is FOIP-oppable, so I don't know if we received any FOIP-ops on it, but I'd like a motion to remove confidentiality on all of the documents, not just the report,
Do we need to name them, just out of curiosity?
just all the documents. There's no name.
Anything, whether it had to do, as part of the process, you struck agreements to dismiss a couple of people, that stuff too?
Well, anything that we cannot
I wasn't
release, yeah, anything we cannot release based on the Freedom of Information rules, we won't. But anything else,
Anyway,
some of those amounts can be released, I'm sure. Taxpayer money, but anything of a personal nature can't be released. Names can, but anything of a personal nature can't be. So before the documents get released, we'll make sure that they clear the FOIPOP test.
perhaps we'll gather all of them and present them to you, and whatever you want to release, we'll release.
Well, we have a motion. Motion to,
I'd make a motion to release it with the approval of our solicitor.
well, do we need to bother paying that to a solicitor?
I think we do, we have a responsibility to the taxpayers to make sure that we're not leaving ourselves open to be.
If it's FOIPOPable, and I believe, can you decide that? You have a check sheet to go through? I don't want to put you on the spot here, but,
No, I will second the motion to have legal take a look at that and make sure that there's not going to be any issues moving forward so that we're covered on any information that's going to be released.
oh wait, now you should, your mic. Cancel the rest.
I have to say that again because we're going to say it the same way.
Okay, cancel, Councilor Martel, can you cancel yours? Okay.
I
Say
would
that
just
again.
like to,
There's been a motion to release the documents, and you want to make,
and I do want to second the motion so that before any information be released, that it go through legal to make sure that there's no issues
Okay,
with this moving
so
forward.
we're okay with that. So the motion is to check all of the org review documents and ensure that they are releasable, or whatever needs to be redacted can be before they get put on our website.
I'm just thinking
Okay.
legal settlements with a couple of people, that involve lawyers and that. That's the kind of stuff that I think I'd want to refer to a solicitor
Yeah.
before releasing it.
Okay.
Get a copy of those, I'd like to see what all this information you're talking about, what is it?
What?
I don't know if I've seen everything. Do we get a copy of that, all the information before we release it?
You should have.
Well, I think we should. I'd like to know what we're talking about.
Question on the motion.
Hold a second, Councilor Martel?
Yeah, I agree with the motion, but I'm just kind of wondering, I thought that the discussions we had previously on this issue, that was already stated in our discussion that we would not release any personal information, and I think there
That's-
might be a motion made to that already.
Well, there is, but how, I thought it was, but it actually only was for the report that we got after all those meetings. The discussion, when I left, I thought it was on all, but it wasn't. So I want to make the motion clear, it's on all documents involved. We'll have legal check them all before they will be put on our website.
But I certainly agree with the two previous counselors, if we're putting something out there that we can be liable for.
Yeah, no, I don't have an
We worked
issue.
our while to go to legal and find out, for sure.
Yeah. I don't have an issue with that if you want to.
See,
Okay,
I'm at
it's
a disadvantage in that
here.
I wasn't here, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure what, but I just have heard what the process was, and, so I think that's prudent,
Okay.
what you guys are talking about.
I think it's time to put it to bed, put it out,
Yeah.
put it to bed, make
Yeah.
sure that we legally do that, and that's it.
Okay, question's been called. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carried. Moving on to my second item. It has to do with rentals at the arena. Some people out in the public have spoke to me about, and it has to do with the Richmond Figure Skating Club. They were granted some ice time on a Friday evening, and I can't say I'm sure of the time, maybe between 7 and 8. They were granted that time. The person that's the president of that club put that on Facebook. People signed up for that, and I believe within a day, couple of days, that was taken away from them. And it's been quite quite a situation, I guess, for them to try to get that back, and the final decision was no. Some information has come to some of these people how the decision was made, and what I do want is I want to find out how that decision was made and exactly what is the policy on ice rental. Staff gave this club the rental time. They went with that process, with that time frame. People joined up, and now it's kind of becoming an issue. So I just want some resolve to that.
I can respond if you wish.
You can respond, yep.
I was approached by the figure skating club, and that's why I can respond. The figure skating club have some difficulty with a coach, in that coach can't make it to the Richmond Arena for the ice time that they had last year, which was 6 to 7 o'clock. Am I coming through on anything? They asked for it to have an extra hour from 7 to 8 on Fridays, which was an ice time that the Richmond Gentlemen's Hockey had for a long time, many years, and we're told they could have again this year. In the month, they started around the 1st of November, so the lady that was doing the bookings told them that for the month of October, they could have that ice time from 7 to 8, but that the gentlemen's hockey would have it from November 1st on. I have emails for all of this stuff. They then expressed strongly that that was posing them some pretty severe problems. Staff went to the Gentlemen's Hockey League, where one of our large customers, and asked them to change, to go back another hour. They indicated that they had their schedule made up. They thought that it would cost them some players and so on, so they said, we've had it for a long time, we'd like to keep it. The staff then went about trying to accommodate figure skating by working with other groups. They approached minor hockey, and they approached some people who had the rink on an ad hoc basis, including the high school. And so by working with minor hockey, moving public skating from Sunday to Saturday, they were able to accommodate the figure skating club and give them ice time on Saturday morning that minor hockey had. So they did get a thank you from the figure skating club, but I've spoken to a couple of people who run it. They're doing a good job. They're volunteers who are trying to provide something for an important group in our community. But all in all, I think that the staff that were involved did a great job, and got a thank you from the figure skating folks for that. How'd I do?
Your comment was staff said they could only have it for October.
Yep.
I'll need to see that email because I was told different.
I have it right here.
They were granted the time and then it was taken away. You'll print those off for me.
Yep, I have it right here.
From what I was told, the gentlemen's hockey, the majority, and I did see that email, agreed to give that time for the figure skating because it was a problem with getting a coach. And I think your first email, Louis, had to do with gentlemen's hockey being a bigger financial customer. And is that what we're looking at?
No, most certainly not.
Okay.
But the first thing you want to do is say to folks in the summertime, early fall, that what you had last year, you can have this year. So that was done, but
I don't believe that was done. I believe the figure skating was granted a time, and then they were told the following day they couldn't have it. And I just, from what I hear of how the process went, I'm not very happy with that. And I think we need, is there a policy on the ice rental? Someone calls and is granted it, then some arrangements need to be made for that. So That's the issue I have with it, and we have a nice rental policy or not? You know, and if we don't, not that we don't need any more policies, but how this whole thing went, I wasn't very happy.
But again,
Deputy Warden?
Yeah, Mr. Warden, did you contact staff? I mean, this seems to be like a staff issue. I mean, somebody call if there's ice rental. We have people in municipal government that deal with these things. And I know you're concerned about figure skating, but there could be a group that comes to me and I refer to staff and say, you're in charge of the ice rental.
I sent an email and nothing. I sent an email to all of you and I didn't receive anything, so I thought I'd bring it up here, and I just want some answers.
Don't send an email to me, Mr. Warden. You go directly to the staff that's in charge of ice rentals.
And I will
send an email to James Bash. It's not going to work.
I sent it to everybody. What I wanted was that we do something about it, and it seemed nothing really got done that was favorable.
Well, is there a possibility that, Louis, can you check with the staffs in charge with ice rentals?
Yeah.
To see if you already done that anyway.
As long as you guys don't mind me discussing it, I'll see what we can do, but time is running out really for that group. That's the thing,
well, it's been resolved, I think. Their coach, we've spoken to their coach who will come Saturday morning.
Well, actually, kind of getting feedback. Coach kind of said that they wouldn't come and then said they would, so it's just been an upheaval for the whole group.
I will say to you,
Bushey?
though, I'm sorry. I was
Councillor
just going to
Bushey?
say that there are consequences to things that happen. One of the areas is that the person who was responsible for all this work at the arena, or the position, has been eliminated.
Yeah.
Anyway, I apologize.
No, thank you very much, because I certainly know who that person was, and I know the functions that she looked after here. As far as sending an email, Brian, or Warden Marshall, I did get your email, and I was very concerned about it. Figure skating, the kids are number one as far as I'm concerned, and gentlemen hockey, I certainly appreciate all the people that play on those teams, but I think they're growing ups. They can afford to move aside for an hour or change their schedule a little bit to accommodate the kids. And if we're going to give priority to other people, I think we have to give it to the kids. That's that's a must in the community. It's it's a function, and a lot of people spend a lot of time, a lot of their volunteer work. Nobody gets paid to look after those kids, and I commend them for the time they spend with them. And I think if there's any way that this county can accommodate those kids, then it should be done.
Are we accommodating kids or adults? That's my question.
Yeah, well, we'll find out how it went. Yeah.
7 to 9 or in the morning. I mean, what group are we accommodating? Are we accommodating a coach from? Where's the coach from? Antigonish or?
Yeah.
So are we accommodating a coach from Antigonish that can't make it on a certain hour Friday night or Saturday morning? That's not accommodating kids. I mean, let's face it. We have staff that deal with these rentals, and I don't intend to get involved. If I can go to staff and they tell me that they didn't try their best to accommodate the figure skating, and you can't say it's not important, Councillor Boucher. They're adults, but they have, don't forget, since 1975, they've been an organization that have faithfully sponsored this arena, and they have gone there on their own, and I'm completely in agreement with you, but I don't think we're accommodating kids, because they can go in the morning, Saturday morning, and I don't think that's the problem. It's not the kids. I think we're accommodating a coach from outside of Richmond County. And to ask somebody that's got rentals, and they have, these parents have kids too that play hockey, and maybe that's the time that they can actually play.
Okay, we'll have some further discussions about this. Moving on to your infrastructure grant.
Yeah, this is an infrastructure fund district, District 1, St. John's Society and Ayrshire Municipal District Infrastructure Fund, the amount of $3726. Jason, you have looked through the application. and it's been recommended by Jason.
Everything's okay with it?
Everything is okay.
So we'll need a
So I
motion.
make a motion.
Okay, so it's been moved by Deputy Warden Gayesh, seconded by Councillor Boucher, that we approve District 1 infrastructure grant in the amount of $37.26.
Right.
That one wasn't emailed to us, right?
No, I just added it on tonight.
Yeah.
Item Z.
So can you have that emailed to all of us so we can all see it?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yvonne, you'll email all of them too.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded on discussion. Questions called. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. That motion is carried. Moving on to item 8, which is the 15-minute question period. Anybody have any questions? Going once. Going twice. We'll be going in camera this evening, and I don't know if it's listed there on the list, but some of the items are a legal agreement, I guess, with a prospective business coming to our area. Some discussion on the travel policy. CAO has a couple of information pieces, and I don't know why a grant that I sent in is in camera, but we'll discuss it.
Is there a seconder?
Yeah, we'll go in camera, and
Is there a seconder?
been moved and second that we go in camera. We'll go in camera in a couple of minutes, okay? We're going back in regular session. Councillor Boucher?
Thank you, Warden Marshall. I'm going to make a motion right now that this county pay the warden for the travel that he didn't submit on time, but it's going to be paid once, brought up to date, and from now on, the travel time will be paid in a 60-day time lapse.
There's not only myself, it should be that all the ones that are out of this 30-day period.
Well,
So you should have just put it that all outstanding, unpaid travel claims.
okay, I'll change the motion then.
Okay.
The motion will be to all outstanding travel claims up to this date only. From then on, the policy will be followed.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that?
Going into uncharted waters here for myself.
So
I'm surprised with this too, but
I just don't know, like, I will tell you that.
is there a
I
seconder
have-
though for discussion?
Well,
Yeah. Is there a seconder?
okay, I will second for the purpose of discussion.
Okay. Now, on discussion, your mic is on and
Okay.
you.
So on discussion, I am somebody who has a travel claim that's in limbo for quite some time now. And because of that, I'm going to declare a conflict in voting on the motion. I know where I stand personally, and I've stated that openly before to say where I'm at with that. But when it comes to a vote, I will declare a conflict, and I'm not voting on this motion, and that is why.
Deputy Warden?
Mr. Chairman, I think the motion is illegal because there is a notice of motion that was served at the last regular meeting to change the policy from the 30-day to 60 days to 30. And this motion here is directly in conflict with that motion. It's doing with a policy change, and the notice has already been served. And I think that's illegal.
The notice has nothing to do with 60 days, 30 days to change.
The notice is something relative to the policy that was given notice at the last regular meeting.
It's to
And
total.
I say that this motion is not legal. And if you want it, I'd rather that you check with legal advice before we vote on this motion.
This motion has nothing to do with the policy.
Well, I'm telling you,
Nothing to do with
it's
changing
illegal.
the
I
policy.
challenge that policy. I'm saying it's
The
illegal.
notice of motion has to do with removing the time. It has nothing, this motion has nothing to do with,
This motion has to do with a change of policy.
no, it doesn't.
Oh, yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Because
Not
you're
at all.
not allowed to pay expenses beyond the 30 days as far as the policy exists right now. And any kind of motion you make subsequent to that motion that exists right now is a change of policy. And you cannot change a policy unless you give notice of motion. And the notice has been given at the last regular council. And that's why I'm saying that this policy is not legal.
This is not a policy, this is a motion.
The motion is not legal.
This is a motion to make a payment. Councilor Martel, do you have anything to say?
Yeah.
Just want to give you your right, I don't see your mic, okay.
Certainly, we've had quite a bit of discussion on this motion, and I think that we came to the conclusion that we were going to look at the policy again, and I will certainly not be supporting this motion tonight before we air out the issues with the policy. Thank you.
Any more discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor, put up your right hand. Contrary minded? Motion's defeated. What we'll do with the policies, we'll make some changes to that. I'll send an email with the changes I believe should be made to it. And that's where we're going to go from here on in. This policy has been violated, and some people have been paid in reference to the pre-approval. And this policy has been violated, and people haven't been paid. So our staff are not being consistent on paying people with the same policy. And that's an issue I have with it.
I beg to differ, Mr. Chairman.
Uh,
It's not staff that hasn't been abiding by the policies. It's council itself. And what happened in the past, that's not my issue.
Okay,
We're the policymakers, we set policies, and right now we're breaking policies. And I don't agree with that, and I will not agree with it.
how are we breaking policy?
Just by changing it, that you want to get paid for something that happened 6 months ago. It's 30 days.
Your mic. All I'm going to say is this. I'm going to say this. There's a section for pre-approval. People do not get paid unless they're pre-approved. People are getting paid, Deputy Warden. That's a violation of the policy. I don't care who's doing it. It's a violation. People should not get paid. Read the policy before you start making those comments. CAO?
Are we talking?
Oh, wait, no. CAO
Are we talking
is
about the
talking.
policy itself?
The policy
Or are we
itself.
talking about something else?
The
We're
policy,
talking about a policy that it states 30 days, that if you submit anything past the 30 days, the policy exists, that you do not get paid.
are you hearing me, Deputy Warden? There's a
And that's
section,
it.
there's a section to get paid. You need to be pre-approved before you go and submit the expense. People are getting, that is in the policy. If there's 10 items of the policy need to be followed, you don't pick which ones you're going to allow or make people follow. You're following them all.
That's nothing to do with the policy that we were discussing. You're bringing up another policy issue, and that's nothing to do with what I'm talking about. The issue with that motion that's been made that deals with specifically the time frame that you got to submit in order for your travel to be paid.
You just said that it's not staff that's violating the policy. That's what you said. We're talking about the policy, not the motion here. The motion is done. You're making a comment that it's not, you beg to differ with the comment I made. Who is making the decision to pay and not pay? Not us. Not us. Staff. They are to follow the policies that we put in place.
Mr. Chairman.
And my point is this. If you submit a claim and you're in violation of one
Mr.
part
Chairman,
of that policy,
I beg to differ. Is the staff violating the policy when they're not paying what you're suggesting they're not paying? They followed the policy by saying you submitted your claim 30 days. Prior, not 30 days, within the 30 days, that is gone beyond the 30 and beyond the 60. Staff is not violating any policy as far as payments are concerned. But council is violating policies when they request that staff do pay it.
Look, I just wanted, your committee of the whole meetings are televised now, And so I just want to make it clear that there are no staff who have claimed expenses that
That's right.
violate this policy. So
This is not staff.
There was a comment made there that, no, that the staff have been following
This
the
is not
expense
staff that are violating the policy. This, what I'm saying is, staff make the decision to pay or not pay. And that's, that's right. Yes. Yes. Okay.
My gosh, it's a nice night.
And all I'm looking for is the section that,
Here we go.
where it says for pre-approval, and I can't say that I remember.
See, at 10 o'clock, at 10 o'clock, the thermostat
Okay.
stops working.
Yeah. No, I just want to read,
Seriously, it does, yeah.
all request. I can't say that I remember exactly, okay.
So Warden, I don't think we're gonna solve this issue tonight.
No.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I already made a motion, but.
Why don't you two get together, one thing, in 1 second? Or do you want Jason to make the second?
Yeah, that's what we're waiting for, that's not.
Yeah, I just, I guess I'm here looking and I should,
Second the motion.
Look, folks, again,
you
thank you.
know what, it's on the,
My apologies, but there was a lot of stuff on the go, and so am I on the go.